Indeed, indeed. Okay, this next topic here, I'm going to call it a notable sporting event, not a big one. Kind of interesting. It has appeal to some people. It's this boxing match going down. Not a whole lot going on in the boxing world, so this one will get a lot of shine here. Anderson Silva taking on Jake Paul. I'm going to try not to be too much of a hater here because, hating on Jake Paul kind of low hanging fruit to be completely fair. But you take a look at the odds in this one. Jake Paul all the way up to a minus 225 favorite. The 47-year-old Anderson Silva coming back at plus 175. So some major line movement here. And yeah, these Jake Paul fights, something about them, they stink. There's something unusual about them. They're not fixed, but these fights are set up for Jake Paul to win. And that's because that's how boxing works, right? Because Jake Paul is part of the promotion that's putting the fight on. So they're going to handpick opponents that they think Jake Paul can fight so he can keep the cash cow coming, keep on making more money off these fights. And, they give him a name guy who's past their prime, who Paul has some sort of advantage over, whether it be a size advantage, the age advantage, in this case with Anderson Silva at 47 years old. And it's not really freak show boxing, but it's celebrity boxing. I know it's technically a pro fight, but come on, guys. I would like to see Jake Paul fight an actual boxer with a winning record, guy around his age and his size, but there's no money in that. If he does win this fight, I think he would probably move on to fight Nate Diaz potentially, and there would be money in that. But if he loses, that could be it. There's not a whole lot of buzz around this fight, so maybe the whole Jake Paul celebrity boxing thing's starting to fizzle out just a little bit here. How am I going to bet this, though, guys? I'm looking at two different options. Jake Paul, you can get him by decision at plus 180. He did win one of his fights versus Tyron Woodley by decision. But I think my best bet for this fight, I'm going to take Anderson Silva by decision at plus 650. I think there's incredible value there. Anderson Silva is obviously, I know he's 47 years old, but I think this is the biggest guy in terms of actual like height and reach that Paul will be fighting, and it's the best striker he's ever fought as well. I know Anderson Silva hasn't really been good for 10 years, but yeah, we'll go Silva by decision. Just a one-unit bet for shits and giggles, plus 650. So, Iain, how do you look at this whole Jake Paul boxing thing and this fight in particular?
Yeah, he's going to lose eventually. If he keeps doing this thing where he takes one tiny step up in competition every single time, then he's going to lose eventually. And I think this is the time he's going to lose. I am going to bet on Anderson Silva. Prices move because apparently he was knocked out twice in training, and then he denied it, said he was knocked down. We'll see. But now I certainly think there's some value on him. Let's not forget, Anderson Silva has actually boxed professionally 5 different times. Yeah. He's 4-1. I beat Julio Chavez last year, which
Cesar
was a pretty
Chavez,
win. Yes. That was a pretty impressive win. But also, if he is getting knocked out in training, that's obviously not a good sign. But he's going to lose eventually. Maybe I'm just betting with my heart. Another bet that I did place, though, I put a bet on this fight to end in disqualification at 100 to 1.
100 to 1, okay.
100 to 1. $10 to win $1,000. I don't know. It just this whole fight seems weird. It stinks. Stinky. It stinks. The fight stinks. And Anderson Silva.
This guy stinks.
Yes, and Anderson Silva, I feel like, just acts weird in some of his fights, especially recently. Remember when he jumped on top of the cage and acted like he won when the fight wasn't over against Michael Bisping, and it's a weird fight against Nick Diaz, and I don't know. I feel like something weird's gonna happen in this fight, so I sprinkle a little $10 on this to be finished by disqualification to win $1,000.
Yeah, not exactly a hot take on my part. I think that's an interesting bet at 100 to 1, sure, but the whole Jake Paul, I hope it comes to an end. Why is it this guy gets so much coverage from the MMA media for some reason, guys? Why don't you cover some actual MMA fighters? You complain about the UFC all the time, but you're out here covering a guy who doesn't even fight in the UFC. It's a guy who's always criticizing the UFC, and I think that's why a lot of the MMA media might be attached to this guy. But I mean, you see Jake Paul, he's calling out the Conor McGregors of the world. You realize Jake Paul outweighs Conor McGregor by a good 30 pounds. I'm not saying Paul would beat him. I kind of hope that fight doesn't happen just because the whole thing would be annoying. I think the whole thing's annoying. So yeah, I kind of hope Anderson Silva can put his lights out and kind of put an end to the whole Jake Paul boxing thing. But you know, I know Paul did try to fight a couple boxers, the Tommy Fury and the Rahman Jr. fight, which didn't work out, and that was kind of shifty. They called that off, and they said that was it Rockman? I think is Rahman his last name, whatever his last name was. They were saying he wasn't making weight, so they canceled the whole card at Madison Square Garden, and coincidentally, ticket sales weren't doing too good for that event. So a bit fishy. The whole Jake Paul boxing thing absolutely stinks. Any more commentary on the Jake Paul situation, Ian?
No, I don't really have anything else for the Jake Paul situation. I will say, little bonus pick, UFC this weekend. I like Calvin Kattar in the main event over Arnold Allen, even money.
Speaking of which, I took that fight to go to decision -125, and I did break down a few other fights on the card. The Pound for Pound Picks podcast. Check that out wherever you find your podcast. Check out, just look up Vegas Insider Podcast, and you'll find us there. For that, you're going to want to check that out. So lots of great